Well, another option team this week with Army, one of the best option rushing attacks in the country. I think Coach Monken's done a great job of bringing this program back to, prominence relative to their standing amongst the academies. They also do a great job defensively. You can see their ranking nationally, where they stand. They do a great job with mixing things up between different coverages. They've had some really good wins over Temple, who we all know is playing really good football right now. Power 5 win over Wake Forest, who's beaten a Big Ten opponent. So there's some quality wins this year for their program. And again, it's going to be a great challenge. They limit possessions again, so you have to be extremely efficient offensively. And defensively, another challenge of playing a triple option team that, again, runs the ball very, very well and can be opportunistic throwing the football. So focus is on, obviously the details and the execution, which in a large degree we were able to do a lot of those things well last week, but not as well as Navy, and came up short. So we'll look to be even better than that this Saturday in a Shamrock Series game, which our kids are excited about playing in San Antonio. The state of Texas is, a very good recruiting area for us. So we're excited to get back into the state of Texas. We just want a different result from our first time in Texas when we were in Austin and lost in overtime. So I know guys are excited about the Shamrock Series, but more importantly, they want to get a win. And this is our next opportunity. So with that, we'll throw it out to you for questions. Go ahead, Eric.
First?
Yeah, sure.
We'll do the concussion question again.
Okay.
Cage, Love, and Tranquil.
Cage, we're going to send for further evaluation. He's made some progress, but anytime that somebody's in their second week and has not fully gone through, the stages as we see them, we'd like to get a second opinion and make sure that everything is good. So we generally go to Dr. Kutcher, who has been really good as a resource for us. So we'll have that appointment set up this week. And
is he at Michigan?
He used to be at the University of Michigan. He's now in a private practice, but yes, that's the same one that you're thinking of. So he's been really good. We've used him in a number of cases that Corey Robinson, for example, and we just like his opinion in certain instances, and we'll probably use that for Daniel. Relative to Tranquil and Julian Love, they will go to practice today. They will practice in a non-contact fashion. If everything goes well, they'll be cleared for contact tomorrow.
Chase Claypool was one of the guys that you brought up after the bye where you said, boy, I'd like to get him some more opportunities, and maybe the circumstances haven't presented themselves yet. I'm just curious what you see his role maybe in those opportunities, and again, is what he's showing you on special teams pause for maybe having a different role next year?
Oh, yeah. I see him, expanding his role certainly next year. And we would have, but he suffered a bit of a hamstring injury during the week, which put him back relative to practice. And he's a young player that needs a lot of work during the week, Eric. So it was one where we really wanted him on special teams. In particular, Navy did a lot of things well in certain areas. So he just didn't get it. But he's back in the mix for us this week for sure.
As this season's kind of unfolded, I know that you mentioned, if I'm paraphrasing it right, earlier in the season that you probably would have liked to practice young players a little bit more, get them ready for their roles in August. How about with recruiting? Has this season changed the way that you look at recruiting in terms of when you have a lot of roster turnover, you've got to have maybe players that aren't as slower developmental. You need some more out-of-the-box, turnkey kind of guys?
Eric, I think it's more about education, and the educational process for us is about, all the things it takes to win, at this level. There are so many things. It's not necessarily about, more reps as much as it is about, getting them involved in situations in the game, fighting for every inch, every blade of grass, just understanding, how competitive it is, play in and play out. And I don't think they see that or get that. So I think what I was trying to articulate more than anything else is that it's important to get them into real life. It can't be just the cleanup reps that don't mean anything. You got to get them into the fray right away and really begin that educational process a lot earlier.
Also with recruiting, since you're, probably not going to name, I would assume, a coordinator till after the season, are you recruiting for defense a little bit differently? You have a bunch of people in the class already,
Yeah.
but are you trying to cast an eye, okay, we're going to be 34, we're going to be 43, we're going to have these concepts in our defense? Are you recruiting to what you think your philosophy will be?
I think if you look at our class, and I know that a lot of people that are in here today study it really intently. We're full at certain areas. So I don't think it's, regardless of whether it's 3 down or 4 down. We've committed to certain areas. Obviously, if there's an elite player at a particular position, I don't think it matters what defense you play. So the foundation of the defense is already kind of found itself relative to the kids that have committed. But if there's a player or two, I don't think it's going to change relative to whether you're in 3 down or 4 down. And quite frankly, we're going to be in both because I'm not going anywhere. So it's going to be a 3 down, 4 down defense, and they're going to have to be somebody that can do both.
Last one from me. As you look at next year and the assets you believe you'll have coming back in terms of players, there's a lot. There's a lot on both sides of the ball. But you've also got guys that are redshirting, guys that are developing. Are there players capable of overtaking or pushing all the returnees that you have coming back?
Oh, yeah. There's a number of players that, we were fortunate enough that, in one sense, got a chance to take a look at it. But we're sitting here every day listening to, what it takes to win every day. So they got both the opportunity not to play and use their year up, as well as learn what it takes, to win, at this level. So yes to that question.
Coach, up here in the back, you're playing another option team this week. So with 2 option teams in a row, how do you mentally prepare your team for kind of a really tough, brutal 2-week grind?
This is what they do. They're football players. They don't. It's a contact sport. We understand the demands that playing option football takes on our players, and I make sure that our schedule reflects the kind of needs that they have, during the week. But it's a tough game. You better be ready because they're tough-minded individuals at Army. So we'll be smart with our players, but they know what's in store. They just finished playing a very tough-minded football team in Navy, and they know that they've got to prepare in a manner that allows them to go out there and mentally and physically beat their opponent.
And now last year, you also played 2 option teams, but they were more spread out in the schedule.
Yeah.
So do you prefer it this year where you have them back to back, or would you rather it be more spread out?
For me, we play them one at a time. You could probably ask me in the off season, There'll be a transition, obviously, going to Virginia Tech when you go 2 weeks without, playing Palms coverage, So there's a bit of a transition there, but I'm living in this. Today's Tuesday, and so it's hard for me to really know whether that's good or bad. I'm focused on, having good practice today.
Brian, over here, you mentioned that Army, like Navy, will shorten the game from a possession standpoint. I can't imagine you wouldn't have more than 6 possessions like last game, but nevertheless, having just gone through it and preparing for it again, I'm curious how you feel about entering a game like that, if you might do something differently in light of last week, or if you saw something you liked last week that you'd want to try and duplicate again, given that there are short possessions.
Well, there's a number of things. Let's start with third down. I mean, obviously, we have to focus on third down. We got to get off the field. We had a number of third down situations where we didn't get off the field. And we got to stay on the field on third down. We can't have a foolish penalty. And so those right there are extremely important. In the red zone, we can't settle for field goals. We've got to score touchdowns. So, those two right there probably stand out for me. Let's say it is a 6-possession game. We can still win the football game if we get off the field on third down and we're more efficient in the red zone and we don't have a foolish penalty.
Just curious how this year is wearing on your guys, being in so many close games and more often than not ending up on the wrong end of that mentally, how you see them handling that.
Well, I mean, we're all, going through, a tough spot, but we're persevering. It's not where anybody wants to be, but we're handling the situation as best we can, and we're trying to make certain that everything that we do makes us stronger for right now and for the future.
Brian, to your right,
Yes.
it looks like Army likes to use their fullback a little bit more than Navy, and the style of their quarterback is a little bit quicker, obviously, than Will Worth, who's more of a power guy. But just in general, how are the two offenses dissimilar?
Well, I think the quarterback probably defines the personality of that triple option. So Keenan Reynolds, for example, was a guy that, for Navy, put you in a position where it was more of an edge game, where Will was certainly more of a lead kind of up inside because of his physicality. So, Bradshaw is more of a Keenan Reynolds guy. He wants to get on the edge. He's not as physical, but he's quick, he's elusive. So it changes the style a little bit based upon who the quarterback is, but you're still defending triple. You still have to defend the fullback, you still have to defend the quarterback at the edge and then the pitch. And then, what their desire is relative to throwing the football. What their appetite is. Is it something that they're willing to potentially get behind the chains on first down, or are they going to save it for when they absolutely have to throw the football? They'll throw it on first down and take their chances of being behind the chains. So that's just a different, offensive philosophy, and I think the quarterback, in answering your question, defines a little bit of the differences.
Do they use as many formations as Navy?
They're a little bit less, but at times a little bit more unbalanced in formations, but still requiring you to, research virtually every look. Jeff was with Navy, so he's got the book. I mean, he knows that if you're not on it relative to all of the snuggle sets and unbalanced looks, then you're not prepared for them. So regardless of whether they have them or shown them, you're going through each and every one. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yep. Jerron Jones, 12 plays last week, and you mentioned it wasn't a good matchup against Navy. Is that also the same against Army?
We'll find out. We'll find out. I think he wants to play a lot this week, and we've got Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, and we'll see what happens.
He was only in 2 series. You held him on downs in one, and you ended up forcing a punt on the other. Was that just coincidence that your 2 best series were with Jerron Jones in the game?
Well, I think you know that one guy does not stop the option. Preparation is important. Preparation is important. That's all I'll say.
The fact that he was limited in what he could be effective in, which is probably taking away the fullback, would that not benefit you defensively even if that was just the one aspect that he influenced?
You got to prepare for the option. You got to prepare every day for it.
Did he at any point express, considering the physical, the injuries that he had in the past, did he at any point express reluctance to be a full-time participant in the Navy game?
I think all of our guys get the equal opportunity, to prepare during the week, and then, we're going to play the guys that prepare, to play the option. I mean, and so each and every week we've got a number of guys that, we try to get, and as you know, you've seen the amount of guys we're playing on defense. They all get reps, and they all get a chance to get in there. And it'll come down to preparation, and if they prepare the way that they need to prepare, they'll all get a chance to play.
Thank you.
Yep.
Brian, here in the middle. Your freshman defensive backs, what do you feel like they got out last week? How'd they grade out? And I'm also curious, just particularly the Julian Love's play in terms of dealing with cut blocks, getting off of it, and sticking his head in there.
Probably as good as I've seen a freshman play, a true freshman. I don't know if I've seen a true freshman play the triple option as well as he did. He was really good before he got dinged. He was running to the football, playing off cut blocks, playing physical, playing smart. Very, very good. His play was tops in terms of assignments, in terms of physicality, in terms of tackling. It was really good.
And I'm curious about Jalen Elliott, because he has not played a whole lot this year, but played a fair amount on Saturday. How did he come through that?
Played well. He had to settle into the game a little bit, but once he did, we started to see his ability to run and put himself in the kind of positions that were really, for us, what we saw from him coming into Notre Dame. There was a comfort level, a physicality, a speed element that was far superior to our opponent later in the game, where we were clearly putting them in a position where they were just tucking it and running underneath. So, yeah, his play started to show itself later in the game.
This might be a reach, but both those guys were both sides of the ball in high school, played a bunch of different positions. Does that help in any way, just in terms of a football IQ, how things fit together?
I'd say they're both high on that football IQ that you mentioned, but I think they've been that way since they were here. And whether playing on both sides of the ball contributed or not, I don't know. But I would say that when we recruited them, we really felt that both of them were smart football players.
And just lastly, sort of building on one of Eric's questions about that competitive edge that you're trying to bring out more and fighting for every blade of grass. As you look forward, do you feel like you have to redo the offseason so those lessons can be learned not in September? They know it when the season starts.
I think we can have that conversation at the end of the season. That's a component that we'll get to, certainly. But, one of the components of winning football games is being mentally and physically tougher than your opponent. And I'm not saying that we haven't been. But, there are times that, it's going to come down to bending a guy back or, finishing off a block. And that's the difference between, a 3-point loss and a 3-point win. And we'll get to that after the season.
Thanks. Brian in the middle.
Just, going back to preparation questions, some of the players noted after the game, the defensive guys were saying that mentally there's a strain going against a team that goes for it on fourth down so often. And actually, Army has gone for it on fourth down, I think, third most in the country, more than Navy. How do you kind of prepare for that? Because, as you mentioned, they're not afraid to get behind the chains because these teams then have 3 more downs sometimes to get a first down.
Yeah. Well, I think, the strain comes from 4th and 1. That's where the strain comes from. And so that's why it's so important that when it's 3rd and 5, you got, and where we started to do a really good job in the 4th quarter is we started bending back the runners. There were a couple of occasions where we didn't bend back runners in the 3rd quarter. And they were falling forward, so instead of 4th and 3, it's 4th and 1. And so that's where it becomes mentally a little bit more difficult when it's 4th and 1. You get them 4th and 4, now go ahead. Let's see what you got. It's the 4th and 1s where you're not successful on 3rd down when it's 4th and 1.
This is probably an off-season question as well, but is that something other non-option teams can look into as football evolves? I'm just curious, a team that's confident running the football, that they can play 4-down football, get to 4th and 1, and anywhere from, say, their own 40 on, it's a 4-down game?
Well, I think there's a lot of, statistical analysis about that, where you are on the field. I think there's even some guys that have sold some books on not punting. I think Angelo wrote that, didn't he? Certainly there's a philosophy there. But when you're in a system of offense that is under center and, certainly, has, their offense built around that, it's a lot easier, So how much practice time when you're a different style of offense is really what you have to commit to if you want to go for it every time it's 4th down.
The last one for me, with week 2 going against the option, I think it was probably your 2nd year where you decided we have to cut in practice. We have to cut our first-string players. Do you have to cut as much in week 2, after doing it all last week?
Yeah, and we do it in a controlled fashion, but yeah, we have to look. It's more of a technique where your eyes are, and obviously it's for our perimeter players more so than anything else. Inside, you're scrambling off of those blocks. And it's hard to, Army cuts a little bit more, but, they want to get those guys up on second-level players. So the days are just chop, cut inside. They need to get them up on those athletes that are running to the football. So it's really the perimeter players that are doing most of the time on that. Yep. Good? Nope.
Sorry, didn't
That's
realize
all
I
right.
slowed the microphone. One of the guys who Eric's question about guys who are redshirting this year, how has Brandon kind of responded to the playing as a true freshman and then sitting out year 2?
How's he responded? Been engaged, learning. I think he's been a very good leader. Cares about his teammates. I think he's got really good leadership skills because, he knows the janitor's name here. He just is locked into all the little things that take to be a really good leader. And then I think he's been really good in terms of attention to meetings when he knows he's not going to get on the field. So I think he's handled himself pretty well.
Is that different than how maybe a true freshman usually redshirts, where maybe they're not as engaged when, in some of the meetings and, in some of the leadership stuff? Is that different given that he's in year 2?
Yeah, there's a little bit of give and take there. I'm not grinding him for questions, and, we're just making sure that he's knowledgeable and, locked in and getting the proper, knowledge base for what we're doing. I'm not quizzing him on, game plans per se. We're giving him a little leeway from that perspective. So, but the kid has got a great sense of how to interact. He's extremely respectful in all ways, knowing that he's not playing. I think he's done a great job.
A guy with his throwing mechanics that just from, you know, a layman's perspective look pretty refined already. Does that help too, where you maybe don't have, he's not a guy you have to really work with every day on footwork or throwing mechanics and that kind of stuff?
Yeah, I think you're right. I think the ball naturally comes out of his hand in a manner that we wouldn't do much there. He's got really good balance and base. Yeah, I think most of his work will be, you know, just, you know, decision making, you know, with the football.
Thanks.
Yeah.
You had talked earlier about when you get into the red zone especially that you need to get the touchdowns instead of field goals with the limited possessions. I think it was your first year you kind of made the comment about get used to it, which kind of noted your aggressive philosophy about going after things. Do you feel that, you know, over the course of your years at Notre Dame, you've had to change a little bit in your coaching? Because I think some were surprised that you did kick the field goal on 4th and 2 and 4th and 4.
No, I don't think so. I think each play is a little bit different. Each game is a little bit different in terms of circumstances. You know, I think what's, you know, most important is getting a feel for each game, you know, in terms of, you know, what is needed to what I felt was needed to win a game. So I don't think you can paint with a broad brush. I think if we had, you know, if we had a particular play called and we threw an interception in the end zone, you know, we would live with the circumstances that we called a pass play in the end zone and we threw a pick. And we didn't coach it well enough. We didn't execute it well enough. I think that's what I'm referring to when I say you got to live with it. We're going to throw the ball in those kinds of situations if we think that that's what is necessary to win the football game. We had, I felt, the wind and the game circumstances at that time. It felt like the right thing to do. So I don't think I can be as general. I don't think the question can be as general as that I've made, you know, I'm more conservative from that perspective.
Whenever Notre Dame goes up against a Navy or an Army, I think the perception has always be just run it down their throat. You're bigger, you're stronger, and you're
Right.
faster. But at the same time, it seemed almost on every one of the throws with Deshaun, the corners were way off the receivers. There was a lot of openings there. How difficult is it to balance having the mentality of running it down their throat or seeing the openings on the flanks?
Well, time of possession, right? So we had 5 possessions that averaged almost 7 minutes per possession because, you know, they're a top-down team. They want to keep the ball in front of them. And, yeah, they're going to give you some room, but they're going to try to minimize big plays. So, yeah, you scored 5 times, but it took you, you know, too much time. You know what I mean? So it's a double-edged sword. You run the football, yeah, maybe you could knock them off the ball, but it's going to take you a little while to score. Where Navy's like, beautiful, go ahead, take 5 minutes to score. That'd be beautiful. Take 6 minutes to score. We'd love you to take 6 minutes to score because it's going to take us 8. And by the time you look up, it's the third quarter, and you've got 5 possessions or 4 possessions. So you got to balance all of those things as you're trying to decide how to play a game against Navy. And I've played them 7 times in a row. They're not easy to play, and they're not easy decisions as the game's going on to try to figure out whether you're going for it or kicking a field goal, because you're trying to map out, you know, are you going to get one more possession?